So I already introduced myself, Chris, and I want the rest of the team who's present right now to introduce themselves, starting with Milton.
Hi, I'm Milton. I live in Argentina. I'm a level designer. I've been working on AM2R, and I was a level designer for Ori and the Will of the Wisps. And now I'm actually, working with Bo, making wonderful things with wonderful people.
Thank you, Milton. And let's go to Robert.
Hello, everyone. I'm Robert Zafazon. I am the producer here with Bo Path of the Teal Lotus. I live in Japan with a background in history. I've also been a producer on AAA projects. I used to work with Pokemon, as well as I worked with Milton on AM2R. And now just enjoying my time working on a new Metroidvania with, again, some great people.
Okay, and let's go Trevor.
Hello, everyone. A lot of you might remember me from the streams Chris and I did a year ago, since this is the 1-year anniversary of the Kickstarter. I'm the lead programmer for Bo, and I was part of the first core team when it was just Chris and I chipping away at this game. And yeah, I'm very, very excited where, like, the direction we're going with this game. You guys are going to be very satisfied.
Very cool. Now we'll go to Alex.
Hey, hello. My name is Alexis, and I live in Chile. I am an artist for Bo, and sorry for my broken English.
And he didn't mention, but he also does some of the animation. So we might talk about that later. And last but not least, Moy.
Hi, I'm Moy. I make the music for Bo, and I live in Mexico. So nice to be here.
Yeah, Moy is actually, besides Trevor and I, the earliest member of Team Squid Shock. He came on maybe like 2 months in. I don't exactly remember. But that's everyone who's here today. There's some certain members of the team who couldn't make it, and I want to make sure that I mention them. So we have Gail, who is a programmer on the team and a Unity developer working under Trevor. We have Mikami, who's from Brazil, and she's also one of the very early members of the team. She does the animations, most of the animations, along with Alex. And sorry, there's a few.
Marlene.
Okay, there's Marlene, who's our cinematic animator. She's kind of part-time, but she's working on a very, very cool cinematic animation. It's almost done. Actually, I think it'll be done today. However, we won't be able to show it off to people until later. We still have to like polish it a little bit, but it's so good. I cannot wait for you guys to see it. And then we also have Miguel from Spain, who does some of the sound design and is working on Fmod integration in our game Bo. So with that, the entire team is introduced, and we'll go right into questions.
All right. So I'll be reading out the questions here and also updating at the bottom of the screen. So again, as Chris said, if you're wondering what question we're talking about, you'll see it at the bottom of the screen. So Chris and team, the first question we have is, how long did it take to get the animations how you wanted?
This is a good question. I think like in the beginning, let me say that I don't have any experience with animation. Of course, I love watching animations and I kind of understand the language of animations. But in the beginning, it was quite difficult to understand exactly what we want to do with the animations. Working with Mikami has been great. She kind of just follows any direction I have for like an idea. And for my enemy concepts, I'll come up with the concept art and maybe like a render of like something for her to go off of and give her some directions. And then usually she gets it right the first time, but sometimes I'll say like, okay, this strand of hair needs to wiggle in this way to give a certain characteristic to the enemy or the character she's animating. Yeah. she works off of, in the beginning she was working off Procreate and switched to Clip Paint Studio, I believe is the name of the program. And usually she can knock out a certain animation in a single day. It's a little more complicated, like NPC with a lot of line mileage on it. It might take, I think the longest one ever took was maybe like a week, but that would be like a super complicated, maybe like a boss type animation. So it is hard in the beginning. It took a lot of back and forth, but once you like get used to working with each other and the workflow, it just happens so naturally. I don't have to think about it anymore. Yeah, she's fast. Alex also kind of begrudgingly became an animator on our project after I saw his ability to animate. He usually just does illustration stuff, but I noticed he somehow sent me something that he did as an animation, and I'm like, damn, that's actually really good. And I was like, how would you feel about doing some animations for the game? And he was really reluctant at first. Alex, do you want to say anything about like animating for Bo?
Yeah, the grind is real. It's kind of hard, but I really enjoy the process. Even though sometimes you like get stuck.
Yeah.
In a very difficult way, so I have to ask Chris for help. So even though he says he doesn't know so much about animation, he does really help me a lot.
Yeah, and when I say I don't know about animation, it's like I don't know actually how to do it, but I understand the language of it and I can like direct in that way. But Alex usually doesn't really need my help. He's good. He just needs my motivational skills mostly, because he's really a perfectionist, and I kind of just usually tell him it's fine. It's not only is it fine, it's really great. So you need to chill. Okay.
All right. Okay, so we can move on to the next question then, which is, and Chris, just as a reminder, if we need to update the tool, if you need to go to the taskbar to make sure it refreshes. Right. And then the question is, will we be able to pet the foxes / kitsune, tentai hana, etc. in the game?
So if you've been following us on Twitter, we actually kind of just did this promo of petting the dog feature because apparently Twitter demanded it of us. We were like held it was like a hostage situation. It's like, if you don't allow us to pet the dog, we're gonna do bad things to you. So that was something that was just added to the game. If you go on our Twitter, you can see us petting the dog character Shisa, who is one of the Kickstarter backer citizens of Sakura City. But the question here is about foxes and tentai hana. It is kind of a big deal to have a petting animation for every single character that's furry in our game. So, you know, we'll consider maybe 1 or 2 more, but like not every single one. I think one, you know, we're just like a one and done petting situation for now.
All right. Okay, so I guess that'll take us to the next question, which is a question I think everybody can contribute to, which is, what has been the most challenging part of making this game, or making a game, but I would assume Bo in particular?
Yeah, Trevor, why don't you hit that one first?
Sure. So on my end, well, for one thing, there's a lot of challenging parts to making a game. I'm going to start with the most recent one, like the most recent challenge that I've encountered. At the very beginning of development, at least for me, on my end of things, I really underestimated the idea of keeping everything working as independently as possible from my end. So for example, if you make changes to one area, ideally no other area should be affected, and the same goes for abilities, same goes for items, same goes for everything in the game. So like keeping things very modular, like I like to say. At the very beginning, I didn't pay attention to that. So there's some cases where, let's say I would work on the dash ability, then all of a sudden the bad ability would be affected. And I'm like, why did this occur? And it's because, you know, I didn't keep that into account. You know? So yeah, off the top of my head, I think that's the most challenging part, in the sense that I didn't take that into account at the beginning, and now I'm seeing like the full brunt of those consequences. But like now I'm doing a much better job of keeping things as independent as possible.
Yeah, I want to add that Trevor became so organized and so meticulous recently. It's like to the point of it's like almost annoying to me. But it's really good for a programmer to be able to do that. I want to say Trevor has become so he's really good now. Over the past few months, he's really just. I don't understand a ton of what's going on in the back end, admittedly. But wow, he works really fast and very organized these days.
Thank you.
Did you want to say anything else about that?
I guess like, yeah, I'll keep it to that for now, because someone might touch on this in their answer.
All right.
Yeah, I'll keep it to that for now.
And does anyone? Okay, great. Thank you, Trevor. Does anyone else want to just volunteer to talk about this?
I guess I can share my personal challenge, because this has been quite a journey. A lot changed over this time regarding the actual character itself. And with that growth, we did try to find the actual game's identity. How do we feel when we play as Bo? And these small details that are pretty much just parameters in a Unity inspector are going to be changing a lot on how the players are going to be interacting with the world. That means that the world is going to be changing according to those changes. So, how high can Bo jump? How long does a dash reach? What is the range of the melee weapons? All of those tiny details are going to be shaping how the actual levels are laid out. And that pretty much is also opening up to new possibilities that we can actually develop. So we define how the player character moves, then we make awesome levels that we can actually use as playgrounds, and then those designs also informs of new possibilities for changing Bo again to actually improve it, and then it becomes cyclical. And as long as you are producing new levels and locations and contents, every single time you make changes, you need to make sure that nothing breaks. So it's a constant update and iteration process that's quite interesting, but it's very it's something that you have to be very thorough to continue checking, because everything is connected, and that is quite a challenge.
Yeah, I want to add to that. Yeah, there's infinite possibilities, and as soon as you add some sort of new feature, you have to contextualize that within the entire game. How is this going to affect things? But I think like really how we make decisions to pursue something is like we find something that is fun to repeat and fun to like interact with, and like just really lean into that. And that's how like a lot of the abilities and sub abilities got fine-tuned and pursued and polished to like their current states. And we might go into a little bit of detail about like what those new abilities might be, because I know some of you are familiar with like whatever, the dash, the ground slam, these kind of core Metroidvania or any game really, these core abilities. But we have some very unique stuff going on in Bo that I would imagine nobody in the public really knows about right now. But it will be revealed in due time, but much sooner than we initially thought we would reveal them.
All right. I was going to say, if Alex has anything to add about the challenging experience of making this game.
Yeah, well, making art is like the most enjoyable part, I think, of making a game. Like you can see stuff for a new perspective, for example, when I see things on the parallax or when they are in engine, and they look much, much better than when I draw them.
Wait, did you say battle axe? Is that what you said?
We are totally spoiling the new weapons.
But that's not
I
even.
don't know.
I think he's
Whoa, spoiler!
like identifying what that new weapon is. So it's like he tried to spoil, but like he didn't do it.
No, it's a battle axe. We got to go back and make a battle axe now.
Yeah, there's no battle axe, but
Parallax.
What was he talking about? Parallaxing?
oh, parallax. Oh,
Parallax, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I was chatting and kind of half listening. Sorry, Alex. You said parallax. Okay, right. Yeah, like right, like Alex produces art assets for the actual game too, like environmental stuff. So like oftentimes he'll like produce the asset and not really know what I'm doing with it in engine. And then I'll show him the next day about like, oh, this is the context of that piece now. And with all the lighting and the post-processing and just like the way things are set up in the scene, like it's kind of cool to see. I think that's what he's saying. He didn't say battle axe. Parallax. Yeah, my bad.
We need fan art of Bo with a battle axe now, though. That's what I'm gonna say. But
Derpa, get on that.
I was going to add probably the most challenging perspective from a production standpoint is just having a timeline, laid out for the team as to what we're going to be working on, when deadlines are going to be, and how we're going to include an iterative process. As Milton was saying earlier, when we come up with a new concept, it needs to be iterated upon. We need to go back, test everything. We need to make sure that if we change a jump element, that we can still make platforming that we had designed previously. But on top of that, once you're finished with an initial design run through the game, you have to go back, iterate again on the entire process, which takes a considerable amount of time. And that's a very challenging thing, not just for game development, but in particular, indie development, where you'll see it very often on Kickstarter. Oh, we'll have this game out by next June. It's gonna be fantastic. And then 2 years later, guys, we swear, next June, promise. And we wanted to avoid that on this project, so we've really taken our time just to make sure that the timeline makes sense and that we understand the overall scope without no scope creep or anything like that. That's the other difficult thing, is just trying to deliver that quality that we're aiming for.
Right. And we haven't really heard from Moy yet. I wonder if you have anything to say in particular about the music and challenges you've had.
Yeah, maybe it will be the thing about comparing yourself with other games, mostly like AAA games, and you have to like really try hard to make something that can compete with that, or just with your own resources, even though you're just one person. For example, in this case where we are an indie studio, and in some other games there's like a full department of people, and you have to like make the same, or try to make the same. I mean, it's like that kind of thing, I will say. It was challenging for me.
Yeah, I know what you mean about like you think about these other studios that have like maybe a 10-person like audio team.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's kind of a little. Indie studios have their own strengths in that we don't have to adhere to as many like people checking and making sure that we follow like kind of these strict guidelines or strict rules. We're allowed to experiment and branch out into these weird or wacky, unique places that would get squashed by like some executive producer at like a AAA company. So Moy has been doing an amazing job with the music. I know there's a lot of pressure to like meet a certain standard, but Moy has been far exceeding it every track he makes. The newest track, which we're gonna reveal in our next Kickstarter update, is one of my favorites. It's like pure genius, if I do say so myself. So Moy's been doing great.
Thanks.
Meat says,
So I will just add.
Oh.
Sorry. Yeah, I will just add to that I feel like it's okay to strive forward and try to be better. Like be a little bit perfectionist is sometimes okay. So yeah, it's like one of the learnings I got about this project. like it helped me to make better music. I mean, you saw my first compositions and the first mix, and I think it has like evolved in a good way.
That is true. I think a lot of times in your life, this is just general life advice, but like people have talent. People have like a hardworking ability. When I met Moy, I saw like his potential at the time, and I was like, if given the opportunity, Moy will rise up to the challenge to make Bo's music the best possible music it could be. Sometimes people just need that belief in them and that little like reason to create, to really flourish, and Moy has been stepping up to that, so Moy's been doing really great. Yeah, this is kind of a big question, so we're taking a little bit longer to answer. I'll go really quickly. As the creative director, it's a challenge every day because I have to be I have to have visibility on every single aspect of development, whether that be programming, music, sound design, animation, and I'm directly involved with the implementation of these assets into Unity. And just having to juggle all of these different facets is quite challenging. It's oftentimes you don't know what to start on or like what needs attention. But Robert has been helping a lot with that, with just saying like, okay, we need to get this done by this time, so all of these things need to fall in place by these dates. He's a very organized person, very kind of like organized, whereas my mind is like bouncing around. My brain is bouncing around in my skull in every which direction all the time. So it's really good to have someone organized on the team who understands what needs to happen in order for a game to be shipped. Kind of telling me and directing me what how to focus my creative chaotic energy. All right.
Okay, so before we move on, real quick, I wanted to say that there is an anonymous camel hovering over the current question text in the question doc, so
that could be
I just want to give a heads up.
Oh, I don't think it is me.
Not
anyway.
Sure. No worries. It's coming from something. I'll take a look in a moment. But anyway, the next question is, was the design very difficult, and how would you know which character and clothing design is best for the final submission?
Okay, I assume this is talking about visual design, so I'll just quickly talk about this. Let's take Bo as an example. Bo, I think I've mentioned this before, but people who don't know, Bo went through a bunch of iterations of design. Bo was originally going to be a rabbit at the very beginning of development because rabbits jump, so there's like a jumpy aspect to Bo. We also did a concept of a monkey and a fox, of course, and then there was one more. Does anyone remember what that was? There was one more animal that we worked around. If I remember, I'll let you know. And then we decided to go with the fox, and it went through a few more iterations. In the beginning, it was just like a cloak, but then I thought it needs a little bit of design flair. How do we make this a little bit more unique? So we decided to go with the flower petal theme. And that's where everything started to fall in place as soon as we saw that the cloak is actually flower petals. And in particular, lotus flower petals. So once that element came into play, everything else about the design philosophy for the whole game came together and coalesced in a new way. So now there's a lot of floral elements with every character, especially the characters that are known as the Tentai Hana, which you can read about. The Tentai Hana are core to the game. They're the core, I guess, race of the game. And from that initial design philosophy of the Tentai Hana, all these characters followed a very strict format of like, there's an animal affinity, there's a floral affinity, they have a relic, they have a celestial skull, they have the glowy eyes, they have certain face paint patterns. So it took a while to get there, but like once you have a creative feeling and you latch onto that, and if it feels good, you can kind of just pursue it into all the rest of the designs. I don't know if anyone Alex has designed a few of the NPCs, and I think even enemies in the game. Do you want to say anything about that, Alex?
Yeah, I got a flower and an animal, and I died.
Yeah, Alex is an extremely creative person, and over time, like initially he wasn't doing any of the character designs, but I mean he's just like a prolific artist. So I've ever see him like do some doodle, I'm like, that's interesting. Why don't you pursue that as a concept? Maybe it'll be in the game. And I think right now there's at least 3 characters that he designed in the game. All right, let's move on to a new question.
All right, yeah. So, the next question that we have is how do you approach creating secrets in the game, and what reward will be there for the player if they find one?
Does anyone want to take this? I feel like I've been talking too much.
I think Milton could take that one.
Secrets. Well, there's different types of secrets. Some of them are kind of casual and pretty much in the golden path. Just a little bit of a detour that you can actually take when something calls your attention. And there's usually a typical, something that we want to guarantee that you're going to be having as a resource later on. Things that are going to be slightly deviating from the main path and have their own challenges, those usually yield better rewards or more useful resources. So it's all about what the thing that you want to give to the player is, and based on how useful it is, we create a challenge for that. So pretty much that. I'm not I'm not on the boat of trying to make things super cryptic. Just trying to reward explorers and the curiosity of players that want to explore the world. That's always awesome. But eventually there might be mechanics that will aid you to actually find the secrets for those who are completionists and want to actually make a nice victory lap around the world with your final abilities in the end game. So that's always awesome, and being able to actually visit all locations and being able to move around differently and also finding treasures, it's always awesome. So we're catering to that also.
Exactly, yeah. Secrets in games always is discovering a secret in a game is always a magical feeling that we definitely want to elicit in the player while they're playing Bo. That has been something that we are really focusing on at this point in development, because we had to get like the exact map and flow of everything working first, and then decide like what item makes sense to put here, what piece of lore makes sense to put here. And that's something that we're really honing in on right now as we polish the game.
Right. Okay. So that's a good time to move on to the next question, which is, what is the team doing to make Bo unique as a Metroidvania?
Well, I think one way that Bo kind of sets itself apart is like Metroidvanias have this, I guess, stereotype about them that they need to be dark, gloomy atmospheres with like gothic cathedrals and whatever. I don't know, is that a stereotype? Let me know in chat. Like have a very dark storyline, it's raining all the time, etc. This kind of aesthetic. Bo, well, there might be portions of the game that pay homage to that aesthetic. You've seen clips of Bo. Bo is a very bright game in most situations. Very colorful, kind of more of like a relaxing vibe, although there is that element of something darker creeping up in the background, metaphorically and literally. So there's that element of that, as well as like a very deep focus on characters. I think it's no secret that we were very inspired by Hollow Knight and Hollow Knight's ability to weave these lovable characters, very interesting characters, interestingly designed, and also interesting in the fact that they are very mysterious about where they came from and what they're doing in this world. So we wanted to also make sure the game was character rich. You will be meeting so many characters in Bo thanks to the capacity of our animation team and just my love for including characters in the game. So there's going to be that aspect of it. Also, I don't want to be revealing too much about certain things at this moment in time, but I promise like this question will probably be answered when you play the game. Or probably before that, once we reveal some more of the mechanics that nobody knows about yet. Okay.
Also, I think Milton might have something to add to that, but one thing I want to mention real quick about these, because we've been discussing these abilities and whatnot, and one thing that we've been really good about on this team is just making sure we don't announce anything until it's actually ready. And I think even further than that, we don't even discuss anything until it's ready. So a lot of the stuff we're already talking about isn't stuff of, oh, we could do that or we could scope that. It's, no, we've already done it. We're testing it. It's already there, playable on our end. So we're really excited to be able to actually have that in development. But I want to ask Milton, is there anything that you wanted to add about how Bo is unique as a Metroidvania?
The thing is, this character-driven approach that the entire, game has, this philosophy also extends into gameplay, and it's nice to actually see things that look a lot more organic instead of just the typical just bare gameplay. And this is all because of these, all of the Japanese influence and this attention to detail to actually making a world that feels alive. For example, in any other kind of game, you would be equipping things that would be just number multipliers that change the gameplay somehow. Better damage or reduce damage taken, something, right? And it's just putting something into a slot and it serves a function, right? What we're doing here is that those things that we might be able to equip, those are actually objects that did belong to someone before. This is a part of the world. This is part of history. This is part of the culture of this living, breathing world. And that's something that you don't get to see that often. And I'm pretty sure it makes the whole experience a lot more rich.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Milton. That is something we've been focusing on a lot. And I also totally forgot to mention, and you might be aware of this, but the Bo is, I think, probably a little bit more platform-based than other Metroidvanias. The combat in Bo is very rich, of course, but combat and platforming are intertwined in Bo. So you'll be using enemies to platform off of and either reach new heights or try and I think we can say this. I need to be careful about what I say, but during combat, platforming off of the enemies will be an essential part of being able to pull off really cool stuff in combat. Let's just say that. Is that safe? So when you're fighting these enemies, it becomes a platforming challenge in itself, not just a combat challenge. And that was something that's really core to the design philosophy of Bo, is like you're always platforming, even when you're in combat. You're not always platforming, obviously. You'll be able to sit down and walk around and relax, but it's important that we're platforming during combat, and that needs to be something we're gonna force the player to do. Well, we're gonna force them to do it.
Forefront of gameplay.
Yeah, we want to force them to do it if they want to pull off cool stuff and be able to access these really cool, this cool feature that we're working on.
All right, so I think we can move on to the next question now, which is, what ideas do you follow when it comes to gameplay and user engagement?
Well, I think I just kind of talked about that a little bit. We're a part of our design philosophy of Bo is floors lava, keep Bo in the air. The floor is not obviously lava, but you kind of want to be thinking at all times that, like, I don't really want to be on the floor right now because I won't receive X benefit. So if you are airborne, if you're engaged in combat, you're receiving X benefit, which is something, again, we might not be able to talk about right now. So this design philosophy goes into everything, with the enemy design, with room design, with boss design. We want to engage the player with this mechanic of staying in the air as much as possible. So I think it's okay to talk about the ability of like the grapple slice. The grapple slice will allow you to grapple through an enemy and do a slice, kind of like picture the ODM gear from Attack on Titan, right? You're like propelling yourself towards an object and also doing damage as you pass through it. This is both a combat skill and a movement ability. A very, very versatile movement ability that you can weave seamlessly into the combat. So that's just one idea of the design philosophy behind like creating abilities and keeping Bo in the air, but also fighting and platforming at the same time.
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we can go ahead and move on, because that does kind of build on the last question.
Yeah,
also, I apologize.
You know, one question I'm really curious about?
Mm-hmm.
The AM2R question.
You're personally curious about that.
I'm curious about it. And I know,
Okay.
I think this is a question Pogo asked. If Pogo Bro's in here, we're about to answer your question.
And I do apologize. I just realized I had been missing the names on the last few questions, so I'll be sure to highlight that moving forward as well. And this question is, and excuse me, I'm going to have to jump down real quick.
I just want to make sure we get to this question. I don't know. We've been going for like 45 minutes. I don't know how long this is going to be, but...
Of course. So, and yeah, I'm going through them as well. But how exactly did the AM2R guys join the team? Did you reach out or did they?
Yeah, why don't you give some context of what AM2R is?
Right. So, Milton, I'll let you say what AM2R is, and then I'll loop back around.
So, legend says that there was one crazy person that was bold enough to remake Metroid 2 using Game Maker and assets taken from Metroid Zero Mission and other places. This very strange individual was able to pursue that dream for about 10 years until he was able to finally release that on the 30th anniversary of Metroid. With the help of very awesome, talented people, the game was very, very popular among Metroid fans, and it's still being played today. It's really, really humbling to see people just enjoying it. And during that journey, I met very interesting people, and Robert happens to be one of them.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I'm going to loop back around to how Milton came on and let you explain that, Milton, in a moment. But as for myself, it's a bit interesting because I do follow a lot of indie development projects because I'm very curious about the journey that indie developers go through to ship a game. Shipping a game is extremely difficult. Making a game is easy. Shipping a game is extremely difficult. And Bo popped up on my radar, and I was thinking it's in Metroidvania. That's great. I love Metroidvanias, from my work with AM2R and other Metroidvanias. And then I saw that, it's Japanese inspired. I've lived in Japan for 6 years. I have background in history. So, that really hit me as well. So I just reached out to Chris. I said, hey, I really like what you've got going on here. This is a bit peculiar, but if you need any production related help, either with timeline development or if you're looking for for the record, I'm not a publisher, but if you're looking for one, I can help there. I can do a lot of things that you might need assistance on if you're interested. And Chris, what was your perspective at that time, actually?
Well, I barely knew what a producer's role actually was. I didn't even really.
Most people don't.
Yeah. So I didn't really know I needed one until you described what they do. And then I was like, okay, definitely gonna want a producer, because my brain doesn't really work in the same way a producer's brain would work. Schedules, timelines, things like this. So Robert came and he said he could be able to offer those services, and also Robert comes from a nice pedigree of like working with Nintendo. I don't want to overstep here, but
no worries.
Yeah, working with these. Working with like a number of really reputable companies in the past, and I said, Hey.
Everything okay?
Hey, can you guys confirm that we're back?
We seem to be in different positions in the screen. But,
Yes, okay. Yeah, we're back. Yeah. Okay, let me get my camera back on.
No worries.
Discord doesn't like when I stream it. Discord's shy. Okay, yeah, so I thought, like, yeah, we're gonna need Robert on the team because it would just he's responsible, like you said, for making sure the game gets shipped at X time, right? If it were up to the developers in most situations, it's like, okay, we're gonna delay another year. We're gonna delay another year. We're gonna delay a year. And you guys know how it goes. It happens all the time with many games. So a good producer is keep making sure that the game actually gets shipped at some point, and in also getting shipped in the state that we want it to get shipped in. So
Yeah.
meeting deadlines and stuff. So I was super grateful when Robert contacted me and decided to work with us.
And I will add, producer is a very nebulous term in the industry. So yeah, while Chris is being right back, being a producer is very nebulous in the industry. Most people don't know what it is. In fact, a producer's role can change from project to project, even within the same company. And so yeah, my job is basically to make timelines and to sort of be impartial to the development process where, this doesn't happen on Bo, which I'm really happy about, but somebody comes up with a great idea. It's like, guys, I got this great boss idea. We're gonna make this giant boss. Every boss is gonna be giant now. It's gonna be incredible. I get back. No, we're not doing that. That's we look at the time crunch and capacity. It just doesn't work. That makes no sense. We're not doing
typical, that. I just played Shadow of the Colossus. I have this awesome idea.
Yeah. Now we do, we take ideas and we iterate on them, but we don't. I need to make sure that we are not over scoping, that there's no scope creep, and that we're meeting the deadlines with contingency. And that also means a lot of people who finish the game, you have to take into mind the amount of time it takes to test, the amount of time for localization, compliance testing, and a bunch of other things. So that's what I do. But I reached out to Chris. We started working together, and then not terribly long after that, I reached out to Milton because Milton and I, we've kept in touch for the time following AM2R's release. And I said, Milton, I've got this this great game, and I had already had an idea that Chris had a lot of work and he was probably going to be overworked. I mean, he was dealing with art, he was dealing with design, he was dealing with direction. And I went to Chris and said, hear me out. Milton, he's the guy who level designer for Will of the Wisps. He made AM2R. He has some time. I think he'd be a great fit for this project. And then I reached out to Milton. And Milton, what was your initial impression when I reached out?
Well, at first, some time ago, before this particular contact, I did stumble upon Bo on Twitter, and my impression was, oh, looks cute. Kind of like Okami, Hollow Knight, sounds interesting. Maybe I'll check out the Kickstarter later, and I never did, sorry. And after that, once Robert mentioned this and showed me, the screenshots, and oh, I recognize that thing. You're working on that? That's awesome. Sounds fun. And yeah, the rest is history, pretty much.
Yeah, and I want to add, like, when Robert first proposed that the designer for Will of the Wisp and AM2R would be possibly interested in working, I didn't think it was going to happen. I didn't believe it. We were just, at the time, we were nobodies, complete nobodies. Still are. But yeah, I was just it kind of blew my mind. And when we started working with Milton, he really impressed us with his professionalism and his just overall knowledge and skills. We've learned so much from Milton. The game would be a completely different game without Milton's involvement. Yeah.
Who knows?
Okay.
It might have been better. Who knows? But I also learned quite a lot. And this has been a pretty interesting journey so far.
And I do also want to highlight that one of our testers, Druid Vorse, also worked with us on AM2R as a tester, and that he just insane. The amount of things he will break any game. He will look at your game thinking, this is a perfect game, Druid. You're not gonna be able to break anything. and 10 seconds later, he's like, I'm outside the wall, and I'm falling infinitely. And we're like, what are you doing to the game? So, yeah.
It's pretty much an urban legend, bit like a Sasquatch or the Loch Ness Monster. It's the druid. He will break your game just by looking at it.
Yes.
It's that good.
So wanted to highlight his involvement as well. But that's essentially how we got involved into it. It kind of made sense for this project, and we've been together on this project for now a year now, and I think it's all worked out.
Oh, I see someone mentioned in the chat some people found out about Bo from Alan Becker. Funny story, Alan Becker used to be my neighbor, so that's kind of how I know him. Like, he's a friend of mine, so I just sent him a demo, like, to play. If you guys don't know Alan Becker, he's like one of the OG YouTube like animators. He's incredible, and he has a gaming channel now, so he played that.
All right, so we can move on to another question. I'm gonna start highlighting, I think, what some of the bigger questions are, just to make sure we can address some of these. So we've got this question from Chicken Trolling, or Joel. What's the general future goal for the game? Is there any concrete plans for DLC or further expansion on this world, or do we feel satisfied with the game itself being a closed story?
The first part of that question, what's the general future goal of the game? That's kind of vague, but we will ship the game at at a time that is appropriate and hopefully not too long. We have a great roadmap set up, but we'll try to meet that. Concrete plans for DLC. Nothing is concrete in life. Have we thought about what a possible DLC might be? Absolutely. But making a game is extremely difficult. I don't know if the team would want to take on like working on after, but it really depends on the success of the initial release. So we're never closed off to anything, but as far as like, is that in development right now? No.
Right.
But all the NPCs DLC. Yes.
Oh yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, if people want that, maybe. If they prepay for that, sure.
It's a pre-order bonus. No, I was going to add, that's one thing that I really like, and I try to keep everybody on balance for, is it's so easy to come up with future ideas within a game, and it's also very dangerous when you start thinking about, oh well, what if we had this story thing, we could close it off, because one thing that we want to make sure is that this is a self-contained, you get a whole experience when playing Bo. We don't want you to finish the game and think, oh, I wish that I would have found out more about this character. I guess that's going to be DLC or anything. We want to make sure that you have a full experience when playing Bo, and that's our current goal. Anything like DLC or future sequels or anything like that is something that we will focus on after we're finished delivering this experience.
Well said.
Right. Let's see. We got some other good ones here. This one is actually a question that I find fascinating, but that is a question by Purble, and I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name. What inspired you to go with Japanese mythology, and how does it play into the storyline of Bo? Thanks, and I look forward to playing your game. Thank you.
I am half Japanese. My mother's Japanese, and we grew up, and I guess in an effort to foster my Japanese culture in a way that I would appreciate, we had all these VHSs of like all the Studio Ghibli movies, right? So Kiki's Delivery Service, Totoro, and like all what Miyazaki does with those movies, he really interweaves these storylines with Japanese folklore in a way that a lot of people don't even realize. And at the time I didn't even realize, but as I like kind of got more interested in Japanese culture, I started seeing these references everywhere in Japanese culture, in Western media, in every single media. They're pulling stuff from Japanese folklore more than you would think. Pokemon also is like a huge part of my childhood that pulls from Japanese folklore. And once you start understanding all these references to Japanese folklore, I'm automatically drawn to the initial source material. So admittedly, I didn't know like an incredible amount before I started working on Bo about Japanese culture. I mean, Japanese folklore in particular. Just diving into it and seeing how rich the content is for it, it made total sense to create a world based off of it. There's just so much to pull from. You can take any like little storyline or interesting creature and expand upon it in very creative ways. So having that foundation of Japanese folklore there, and also my background in like loving anime and Japanese media and things like that, it was just a natural thing to make a game about.
And before I add something to this, I actually want to ask, this is a part I'm going to add to this, is Trevor, what was your initial impression, when Chris is like, we're going to make a Japanese themed game? What did you think?
Well, to be honest, that was the part that got me really hooked, because ironically, like before I became a programmer for Bo, I was never like, I really loved games, but I never considered myself a gamer. And then, when and Chris and I, we go way back. Like we were, we're still, very good friends, and we were good friends before Bo. And from time to time, he would, show me what he's doing, and he would talk about the game. And when we were starting to talk about me joining the project to really help him out, it was the Japanese folklore aspect that really hooked me in, because I'm like, I have not really seen that before in a game, or in a good game at least.
Yeah, I need to say this, it might embarrass Trevor, but Trevor wasn't really a gamer ever until he met me. So
I agree.
So Trevor is like kind of like was a blank slate regarding like video games. It was very interesting to be friends with him, because he kind of was looking at things with new eyes, looking from a different perspective than me, who's been a gamer since I was like in middle school or whatever.
I think, again, this question, sort of Japanese mythology, but I'm curious for both, Alex and Moy and Milton's perspective as well. Alex, you're drawing more Japanese themed content, and Moy, you're, the music more Japanese themed. So Alex, what are your thoughts on this sort of aesthetic?
Well, I'm always been like an otaku. I grew up watching, Naruto and stuff. And just as Chris say, you kind of begin to make connections to the folklore, like watching Ghibli movies, especially Princess Mononoke, have a lot of connections. And since I always love Japan and its aesthetic, I was like samurai games and stuff. I keep integrating them to my art style.
Yeah.
So I think, that everything combines to make the game look Japanese.
Yeah. I want to add that like he was doing, I think the first thing he posted on our Discord was this picture of Bo, like it was Tanjiro from Demon Slayer doing like one of his water attacks, and he had Bo's mask on, and I was like, this guy is legendary. So we bonded right away, because he liked some of this. He says he's a self-proclaimed otaku, so he comes from watching like years of anime. So that was one reason why I was like, this guy's joining the team. He's got the artistic chops, and he's got the love for the source material. And yeah, I'm also very curious about Moy, because Moy, I don't think this is great, because I don't think Moy did really Eastern style music before this, right? I might be wrong.
Yeah, curiously, I've never composed anything like Asian, but I have to admit, and I have to say, I mean in a good way, that I was also a victim of Japanese propaganda since childhood. I mean in a good way, because I fell in love with Japanese culture. And it was everywhere. It was in the cartoons. It was in video games, and I used to play a lot of video games. It was in even some clothes, like I like a Pokemon shirt or something like that. And I had the opportunity in the past to visit Japan, to also like make songs in Japanese and things like that. And when I found out about this project, I was like just very happy, because I remember you asked me if I ever composed something Asian style, and I told you not really, but I would really like to give it a shot, a try, and well, it was like a dream project for me, especially because it was a video game, like two of my favorite things. So yeah, I was really excited.
Yeah, Moy has this background in music. It's you studied music, right, in uni? Yeah. So like his ability to just jump genres is unmatched. Like you can listen to his other stuff too, but like I never once thought he was incapable of creating a Japanese sounding, traditionally Japanese sounding music. You know.
Right. And then before I go into my comment, I just one last Milton, is there anything that you wanted to add to the Japanese side of things?
Well, the Japanese influence is quite interesting because it's so vast. There is so many legends and yokai and characters and stuff that's so rich in history. And fortunately, a lot of those stories and characters, they do translate very well into gameplay. So there is a lot of correlation stuff and tools to actually get inspired to create new things. So there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to be recognizing. Some of them are going to be weird and kind of obscure, but I told you now, that you're going to be playing Bo, you're going to finish it, you're going to enjoy it, you're going to say, that was good. I invite you to whatever name that felt unfamiliar, Google it, and you're going to be finding some awesome piece of Japanese culture that's going to be tied to that. You're going to be seeing awesome stories. That's
right.
That's pretty much what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Maybe.
A lot of them are great. I was going to add, so personally, this has been really great for me. I've lived in Japan for 6 years. I have a degree in history. I've studied Japanese mythology through my work, in particular with Pokemon. I spent a long time just investigating the geography inspiration behind the world of Pokemon, as well as Pokemon designs themselves, what they were inspired from. I mean, even the most recent games, the legendaries, their names are literally like Miraidon means future dinosaur, really. And they just, incorporate so much into that. And I mean, there's been times where Chris and Milton and I, Trevor, we'd come together for, sort of a design meeting, and I would come up to, we'd be looking for inspiration or source of content. And I would say something like, okay, so I was just at this temple and there were these two really cool things. And Chris, I'm going to send you this link. What do you think? And then Chris would be like, oh, I know this thing about this yokai. I think we could incorporate something like that. And Milton would be like, this is an incredible idea. We could use this for like a stage design or attacks. And, there's so many possibilities and there's so much inspiration here. And in particular, I want to highlight that when Chris and Trevor came to Tokyo for the Tokyo Game Show in September, it was also a great time to just sort of explore and experience Japan, firsthand. I think that was Trevor's first time ever in Japan as well, correct, Trevor?
Yeah, I loved every second of it.
Right. And I think there's just so much history and culture that you can draw from. I think Japanese culture is probably an overused term, but if we're the source of this game, I think we've really hit the nail on the head in regards to design and pretty much everything about the game and aesthetic. Right. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. I appreciate everybody's feedback for that one. This comes from Jonathan, and it says... All right, Jonathan asks, what are some things that couldn't be implemented in the game or things you originally were going to add but then decided not to? I think first, Chris and Trevor, if you could talk a bit about maybe some designs that you had thought about before the Kickstarter came to pass, and then we can maybe talk about some other elements.
Okay, but first I want to say, like, we've been going for like about an hour now, so I don't want to be holding anyone hostage here as far as the team goes, so don't feel like pressure to stay here for a long time, because this might go on for how long. I have the whole day free, so who knows how long this is going to go. I know it's late for some of you who are in like South America and such, so
I have enough coffee.
All right, yeah. I just don't want to hold anyone hostage. All right, let's keep going here. What are some things that could have been implemented in the game? Okay, so there's a million things we could talk about. I can think of just maybe one example. Like in the beginning when we were talking about like what is going to be Bo's core ability set, we had this idea kind of related to the legend of Wukong, which is like a famous bow staff user in Chinese mythology, which, you know, ended up not going that route because of unrelated material, but his bow staff is able to grow, right? So grow to any size. So the idea behind that and how it would work with Bo is that Bo would be able to like use that staff and have it grow for vertical traversal, but also like kind of maybe like a rocket ship type situation. Initially, the game was going to be a lot of bouncy physics where you're bouncing on walls and things like that, using the staff as like the source of that bounce momentum. We ended up not going that route, and I think we fell into a much more expressive mechanics that were a lot more based on player expression rather than random physics, random bouncy physics. That would be more reminiscent of some like a web browser game or something like that. There's a lot of content that was cut at the very beginning that we had ideas for, just because it would take so much narrative development, or another area was just cooler than that, so we want to work on that area instead of this area. Trevor, you want to add anything? I think we maybe just give like one or two examples.
Well, you definitely hit on the ones that I was going to say initially, like that, like the what was it, like where you hit a wall with the staff and then you like bounce away from it.
That was initial called the parry.
Yeah, that was like the OG parry. That was like one of the first like kind of other abilities other than like the standard staff hit and the dash that we played around with, but it just didn't feel quite right, and there was like it would be prone to many errors, as I'm sure everyone can understand. I'm kind of blanking on other specific examples like this particular problem of what can't be or what couldn't be implemented. This is, at least on my end, this is becoming more of an issue recently in terms of scope. Like, for example, this is kind of a small example, but like there is a point in one of the areas where just as like a spitball idea, we're like, oh, well, maybe here we can play around with maybe some water physics, for example, and I immediately had a heart attack, and I was like, oh my god, like at this point, whoa, like that would be crazy to implement, just because like in terms of time of development, we're closer to the end than we are closer to the beginning. So like doing something like playing around with water physics, like something complicated like that, that's not really a problem if it was thought of, let's say, like a year ago or even a few months ago. So like, yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. I wanted to add something. Let me see if I can remember really quickly. Oh yeah. Just like where the game really started to come together with mechanics. We were experimenting with a whole bunch of stuff. Maybe we could talk about that at another time. But where the game really started to come together was our inspiration from Dust Force, where you're able to reset your jumps off of. I haven't played that game in a while, but at the time there's like just circle colliders that you can, whether that be an enemy or just a circle collider somewhere, and you're hitting it, and you can reset the jump off of that. That is what initially launched a lot of design decisions, like a ton of design decisions, and we started to really see, oh, Bo is about resetting your jump, resetting your dash, moving in an aerial way. And then from that first mechanic, which we call the bump mechanic, bow and jump portmanteau, That mechanic really launched everything else, and it just became super fun. A lot of people, I have heard people mention that that's the mechanic from the Messenger, and it actually is the mechanic from the Messenger, but it was kind of borrowed from Dust Force, because I didn't even play the Messenger until last year, so but it is similar to the Messenger mechanic, in which I think it's called the Cloud Step. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So then I think we can move on to the next question then. This comes from Blue Breeze 52. I think it's a good question as well. Is what has been the biggest difference in development philosophy after gaining a budget through Kickstarter?
Kickstarter changed everything. Let me just say that. Kickstarter changed absolutely everything about Bo. Actually, well, to be fair, we had the idea of what Bo could be, and that's never changed. But Bo allowed us to increase the quality tenfold, because we're able to get people like Milton, people like Alex, all these new team members that came to the team, Gale, an additional programmer, Gale, to like make sure Trevor doesn't die. And Marlene came onto the team with a cinematic, elevating the aesthetic of the game, elevating future trailers, and just the quality of the game, and just the load of stress that was relieved from getting that Kickstarter money changed everything. Bo would have been a lot worse of a game without all the Kickstarter support, or we would have all like died while we were making it. So really changed so much about the game. We're so grateful. We can never say thank you enough to all the people who supported us. Right. Let us know if you supported us on Kickstarter in the chat, by the way.
Yeah. I was going to add, from the perspective of production, as to, because I think you hit it on the head there, Chris, is you see this a lot on Kickstarter, where they'll get 10 times the budget that they were asking for, and then suddenly 2 updates down the line, they're like, all right guys, because we did all this, we're going to be incorporating 7 new dungeons, and it's going to be great, and we have this cool idea for this new weapon attack, and it's going to do all of this, whereas this wasn't taken into account for by a timeline, if there even was a timeline or anything like that. And also, team building takes time. That can be a big element of the production overall. But I think the idea is that with the budget, the game, we're still delivering the same game that we promised. It's just a higher quality of game. It's not as though we're expanding the game and making DLC content and all this other things that would take a lot of time or additional funding. We're just delivering the same promised game to a higher quality than we otherwise would have. And I think that's the most important thing to highlight there. As Chris said, is we're elevating the content. We're keeping it the same idea that we had originally shown off in the first Kickstarter.
Yep. Well said, Robert.
All right. Okay, I'm going to see if we can find some other good questions in here now. Okay, here's one from Gaxa, which is, what is your philosophy regarding level design, and how do you strive to make it interesting?
That is quite a good question.
I'll actually, let's let Milton start with that then.
Okay. So basically, one of the things that I keep as my main principle is that every moment should matter. And that's pretty much it. If you break it down, levels themselves are pretty much divided into moments. Every little thing that happens with the player, what the player is actually doing, what they encounter, how they interact, right? And each one of them has to have a purpose. So are we showing a little bit of environmental storytelling? Are we introducing a new mechanic? Are we testing the player on something specific like combat or a skill that we just learned? Are we escalating on those mechanics? Those kind of things, right? Now we're trying to avoid the typical filler contents that's pretty much in between those moments. So we're not going to be finding very long walks with nothing happening. Or there's always going to be something to explore, something catching our attention, or something that we want the player to experience. And yeah, things should flow into each other naturally, and that takes a lot of time and iteration. Especially how the mechanics are always evolving, and the levels are going with that. Yeah. Also, this extra layer of being in a Metroidvania means that you are going to be revisiting locations with new abilities. So you need to account for the first visit, and whenever you actually go through that location again for exploring, for quest purposes, or whatever, those areas need to work in several levels. So it is a little bit involved, but once that's actually working and players get to enjoy the fruit of that work, it's really, really rewarding.
Awesome. Yeah, Milton has been doing a great job with polishing level design, also like completely creating levels from scratch. Mostly creating levels from scratch. He pretty much said what I was going to say, but I also want to add that, yeah, each scene we have kind of like a list of things that we want each player to possibly experience here, and what's mandatory to experience here, or like not necessarily mandatory, but like what what we want them to do in this scene. So we'll have the list of, like, say we introduce weapons here, we introduce this interaction with the attack here, and make sure that they learn it in a safe environment, and then later in a later room repeat that. So we bring the player from discovery, learning, to mastery, and that also has to mesh with so many different things, especially in the beginning of the game, because you're being introduced to the world, the attack mechanics, new items, their functionality, new characters. You're so thrown into this, and we wanted to make sure that the player wasn't overwhelmed. They were discovering things supernaturally, not supernaturally, but very naturally, and just having fun while they were doing it. Like, they didn't even realize they were learning something. But also always surprising the player along the way. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so this next question comes from Dark. How do you all do the sound design for Bo? I'm curious what the thought process is and how you make all the sounds too. And if the team had to get creative to make the right sound for something.
Cool. Could you update the question?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so the design philosophy behind sound design is has a few very simple rules. We want organic sounds. Organic meaning not something that was created like with a obvious synthesizer. So not like a robot sound or like a sound of a machine. So organic sounds, like, make sure that if it's a piece of bamboo that's hitting the floor, it sounds like a real piece of bamboo, like a foley of a real piece of bamboo hitting the floor, rather than something that was synthesized. In addition to that, at any opportunity we can, we try to layer on traditional Japanese instrumentation. And Moy could talk a little bit about this with what you did about the sound effect, the dialogue sound effects, but first I'll mention, anytime we say, oh, this object in the game could be represented by some sort of instrument, like glass breaking could be represented by, well, that's not a good example, but like a crate breaking could be represented by some percussive instrument, or some Japan has a lot of interesting instruments that kind of really lend themselves to sound design rather than making actual music, because the traditional Japanese instruments are very percussive. So one interesting thing we did is for the sound effects of the dialogue. Maybe Moy can take it from here if you want to talk about how the dialogue was.
Yeah, with the dialogue, we decided with Chris that it will be interesting, instead of using like actual representations of voices, use the instruments to imitate the speech a little bit. So we try to make like short phrases that could represent sometimes surprise, sometimes just like normal speech. have tried different things with that, and we have like took a section of the characters, like we separated like Tentaihana with the Yangqing, Chinese. It's actually a Chinese instrument with a certain sound, like it's very close to the glockenspiel, but it's to like represent like their celestial beings, and the others use like a like kind of koto that is like a more mundane sound, things like that. So we try to use that approach, and I think it has worked well so far, and maybe we will polish it in the rest of the development. But yeah, it was quite fun to
Right.
reach that solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Moy did a really good job stepping up to the plate with that weird request from me. But and I want to do more with it, because we have a kind of, it's working now, but more variation would be amazing. Like, we wanted each type of character, like depending on their yokai race, like to be clearly identified with their speech and with the instrument that's associated with their speech. So like the sumos all have these taiko melodic phrases, not melodic, but rhythmic phrases. Taiko and that one instrument, what's that called? Or it's like a sumo instrument where you're hitting these two wood blocks together. I don't remember the name of a lot of these instruments, but the way Moy did it was extremely clever. And like you were saying, the Tentayana have like this more ethereal, like high class sounding instrument, and the more of the animal type characters will have a instrument that kind of goes along with their social status or class, or their yokai type. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so this next question, or actually I wanted to ask Trevor if you had anything to add to that question as well.
Trevor went to the toilet.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. No Trevors today. Okay, so this next question comes from General ESB, and it is, how will the story be presented to us? Will it be drip-fed like a Souls title, or will it be more clearly told?
I've never played
like
a
Souls-like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess Hollow Knight is a Souls-like? I don't know.
I think Metroid Prime is a good example as well, where the story isn't just in your face, this is what's happening. It's you have to go through the scans, you have to go through things like that, and you have to actually dig down to find the plot.
Yeah, so it would be like that. The story is drip fed for players who pursue understanding the story too. There's going to be a lot of we have some scrolls and things to read that will, I will say, if you play the game and you've never read any piece of the lore that we drop through the game, the optional lore, you will kind of not understand exactly what happened. You will need to unlock certain areas to access certain text in order to really understand the story we're trying to tell. I set it up so that if you play the game and beat it, with the post-game content, that you will understand, or the post-critical path content, you'll understand kind of, but you'll be like, wait a second, what? And then you'll have, what, in a good way, not a confused way, but like a curious way. And then you'll want to kind of like put all the pieces together. That's my goal.
I wanted to ask Milton, in regards to this philosophy of story, how has that affected design?
Well, pretty much it's about where the NPC encounters are going to be, where the story beats are going to be, presented to the player, and whenever these NPCs are going to be providing services to the player, if that involvement is going to be affecting both the player and also the NPC. There is a little bit of interactions between the players and the NPCs, and so you get to see a little bit of character growth with the relationship they have with the player, and also potentially the environment. So there is a little bit of world building on that front, gameplay-wise, but most of the exposure is going to be pretty much through lore, text, and other things that are going to be more managed by Chris. And this decision on how to properly expose players to the whole situation and why things happen, yeah, that's something that it's a bit more on the Chris side.
All right, so here we go. So this next question comes from Voice of Nature, and it is, I wonder when there will be an official update on localization. And this is something that I can go ahead and tackle because we have had requests on Twitter for languages including Ukrainian. I've seen Arabic as well. And a lot of these, we're always taking into account, what the fans are asking for, what languages are going to make sense. And of course, even if a certain language doesn't make it into the initial release, we're always looking into how we can update content in order to incorporate these languages. We don't have anything to announce at this time, but as we get further into the year, we'll be starting to make more release-oriented updates, including localization and testing as well. So when we get to that point, we'll update the community on what languages are going to be incorporated. And then further down the line, if we have more opportunity to include additional languages, we'll update that at that time as well. Chris, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, that was... I don't know what I'm allowed to say at this point in time. So Robert can handle that.
There we go. All right.
I just want to make sure your Google Docs Robert thing is not showing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Your little Google Docs editing, who's editing it is popping up.
Oh, the camel is somebody else. Like, I don't know.
No,
is it actually on? It should be further down.
It's all good. It's not really a big deal.
Okay. All right. Okay, and then let's see. Another great question to ask. Got a few quick questions here. Here we go. So this is from Wolvie. I apologize if I have mispronounced that. How many hours do you think it will take to complete the game in a blind playthrough?
It's so hard to say at this moment in time. Obviously, it's going to be very skill-based. We haven't had, at this point in time, not even the team has played through the entire game just because of reasons. But it would take too long at this point, and I don't think it would be worth our time until later on in development. But we were always shooting for 8 hours critical path, 12 hours 100%. That's kind of what we were shooting for. If it goes longer than that, great. But our main focus was to create a world where people wanted to spend time in, regardless of what they were doing in that world. And it would be fun to do so. That being said, yeah, our minimum goal was critical path 8 hours, 100% 12.
Right. And Milton, as the primary designer for Bo right now, how long are you feeling, when you're designing these, how are you taking that goal into account, and how does it feel? How do you feel as we're approaching that? Do you feel as though we're on track for that? And how do you incorporate those goals?
I mean, I pretty much make sure that the content that's being produced is fun. And yeah, it's so far there is enough content to reach that number more or less within a typical playthrough. Again, we are all quite used to play testing this. We are all very acquainted with the character controller, so we are pretty skilled already, and we are pretty speedy testing the game and completing the areas. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that players, whenever they're going to be trying things out for the first time, they're going to be taking a little longer than us. So yeah, the important thing is the hours that you decide to spend on the game are going to be fun and memorable.
Yeah, we cheat a lot when we're playing too.
Yeah.
Debug tools are spoiling us totally.
Yeah. We cheat. We cheat without even thinking about it. There's like, oh, I made this jump, but like, are you actually like debugged to the side? Robert, yeah, can you just move the arrow key down a little bit in the Google Doc? It's blocking part of the question. Interesting.
Okay.
Oh, I need a live update. Okay, there we go.
Okay. Sorry. So I should probably, I need to remind you to make sure that and the camel is gone. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right, so we're good for the next question then?
Yep.
Okay, so this one is from Maddie. Will there be post-game content, or will you just be reloaded to the last save before beating the final boss if you try and play that save file after beating the game?
Ooh, this is a spoiler-ish territory. But yeah, it will operate like that, where you reach the final boss. It will just continue to reset from the point right before that, which makes perfect sense to do. But let's just say that maybe the final boss that you think is the final boss is not actually the final boss. I think that's safe to say. There's gonna be more stuff to do than you think initially. Yeah, that's fine to say.
Okay. All right, and let's see. Here's a good question, is from Carlos, and it is, will there be a physical edition of the game in the future?
I don't think that's been talked about yet. Like, we haven't moved forward on that plan, but obviously it makes sense to do that. I would like that. Yeah.
I was going to add regarding this, again, it comes down to, we're always open to future opportunities. And this is a bit of the higher priority, if there are such things as a priority in sort of future content. It's a sensible path. If there's demand for it, by all means, it's something that we've already, we're talking about. It's just, we are focusing on getting the game made right now. And when those conversations come up, we're always listening. But I think it's going to come down to ultimately demand and just when the timeline for that will make sense. All right. Okay, and then let's see. This one does not have a name associated with it, but it is for the game. And just want to remind you, Chris, if you need to update the questions, will it be more lore intensive, or will gameplay hold a larger role?
I don't think you'll be like, oh, this game is so lore intensive at any point. All lore will be passively distributed to your brain. It's not like, and if you want to go out of your way to discover more lore, you'll have the options to do that. Gameplay, I would say, is definitely our number one concern. But the lore enhances the gameplay in a way. So we just from the beginning, is this fun, was the question we ask. And like, if it's not fun, it's not worth playing, in my opinion. So that was, the gameplay is always going to take forefront there, but the lore enhances your experience and the immersion. But I don't think it's lore intensive, whatever that means. It can be if you want it to be. I tried.
The fact that it's going to be passively delivered to your brain, it sounds like a subliminal messages or something.
Play more, Bo. Play more, but no. All right, now this is a question for everyone. Just a little bit of a fun one from Nurkader. Does Bo like sushi? If so, what kind? Chris.
You guys ready for the intensive lore drop?
Oh man, here we go.
This is what they were talking about. So Tentai Hana don't need food for sustenance. They survive off of tea and sunlight, or moonlight in some cases, which is technically sunlight, but whatever. So does Bo like sushi? We don't really got sushi. Bo maybe likes to eat ramen. I'll just say that. Maybe Bo enjoys a nice bowl of ramen more than sushi.
Okay. You know what, Alex? What do you think? Does Bo like sushi? Do you think Bo would?
Oh no.
This is like, you're a sushi, not my Bo, not today.
I couldn't let him reveal that. No, just kidding. Sorry.
Oh man, yeah, that was a big spoiler, Alex. I can't believe you. Good thing Chris left. Oh my gosh, we would have been in some trouble there.
We're back though, right, chat? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we're back. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna add.
That's what I forgot.
You're not gonna know this, Chris, until the game ships. But Alex put in a an animation where if you're not moving for so long, Bo just whips out some tuna sushi, and starts going to town.
Yeah, my team could be conspiring behind my back to ruin me, basically.
Right, Milton, what do you think? What kind of sushi do you think Bo would eat?
Of course, as with every assignment, there is a little bit of research going on, and sushi seems to be one of those cases. There is something called hinamatsuri sushi, and you might Google that. It's a very awesome recipe. Basically, it's sushi that's decorated with the shape of a flower on the side of the roll. It looks very appealing. I've yet to try it.
Yes.
Whoa.
I thought it was going to be appropriate since this is a Celestial Bloom. It's going to be kind of related, I guess.
All right, we'll talk later, Milton.
Yeah, Hinamatsuri is actually essentially Girls' Day in Japan, and it was on the 3rd. It's actually the anniversary of Bo's Kickstarter ending, and it's more of a celebration of girls. The Hinamatsuri, Matsuri being celebration, Hina being more towards the girl element. So. Yes, that's a good point. Moi, what do you think? It doesn't even have to be sushi. What Japanese cuisine do you think Bo is going to go look for?
Maybe kareage. I'm not sure. It's the one thing I will like.
That'd be my choice too.
Good choice.
Chicken, so yeah, maybe that or ramen is always a good choice.
Karaage is Japanese deep fried, usually chicken. So in case anybody in the chat is wondering about that. And then Trevor, tell us about what sushi Bo has going on. What are you programming Bo to eat?
I'm programming Bo to eat tonkatsu, just because I like tonkatsu. And I know that's not a type of sushi, but I'm overriding the sushi question with tonkatsu.
Okay. I'm going to go one step further than you, Trevor. I remember the first place I took Trevor and Chris when they came to Japan was Gyukatsu. At first place, as soon as we got into town, I just took them immediately to Gyukatsu, which is tonkatsu but with steak. I think that's probably what Bo's gonna sit down. Bo's a Tentai Hana. Bo's gotta, be enshrined. We gotta give Bo the good stuff. So I'm gonna say Gyukatsu is my answer there.
Oh, that was so good.
All right. There's that deep lore. So this is a good question for Trevor in particular. This comes from Voice of Nature once again. And to update the sheet is, here we go. How do you deal with fixing bugs, glitches, and crashes? Is there a tool or strategy that other developers might use to make optimization better?
Ooh, yeah, that can have an infinite amount of answers. Like how to catch these things. Basically dealing with bug fixing. I'd say there's like the minor kind of bugs that are really easy to fix. Like maybe something isn't the right color, or maybe there's like an animation that's not playing correctly. Those are like pretty easy to fix. The ones that are the hardest to fix, there's like two sub answers to this. Like both of these answers, they're bugs that are very hard to replicate. Part A to this answer are bugs that only occur under very, very specific conditions, but they basically break the game. So, like, for example, if you're batting an enemy and then you hit dash and then you get damaged and then you try to bat again, something happens. Like, I don't even know if that's a real bug, but I'm just giving like a wild example of what's happened before.
Yeah, I think in situations where you're inputting a lot of things in rapid succession is more prone to bugs than we ever probably imagined. But we've experienced any bug we've experienced has been any big bug has been due to that. But we've tackled most of them. But There was a
Yeah.
really easy bug earlier in the demo before we fixed it, where involving the bat. The bat caused so many problems in the beginning, where you could clip through colliders, like, because we change Bo's position slightly when you lock into a batting state, and you're clipping through walls, and yeah,
that took forever. Like to find a real. We eventually did find a really clever and scalable solution.
Yeah, that was one of our first
that,
big ones.
Ooh, yeah.
I was.
Oh, go ahead, Robert.
I was just actually going to mention, some of the bugs that, like the batting bug. I know Druid, when he first got his hands on Bo, and I was bragging, I was like, "Good luck, Druid. I will like to see you clip through," and he's already falling infinitely. Well, darn, he's So I mean, I'm happy that we do have Druid as well and other testers to find these bugs when they do crop up as well.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the second part of my answer are like really hard to replicate bugs that either you can only really find once you build the project. That's happened on multiple occasions, and it's extremely annoying and very time consuming to do, because you have to actually. So when we work on the game, we're working on a program called Unity, and then when you want to send people the game, you have to basically make a separate program of the game itself, and then you send that to people. But when you do that, for whatever reason, there's very unexpected things that happen. Most recently last night, actually, but that's kind of a long story.
We fixed it. It was annoying, but we fixed it.
I hope we did.
I know.
All right. Thanks, Trev.
Well, there's I'll just give one more answer because there's so many different answers. The other kind of bug that's also been happening kind of recently are really, really big bugs that only happen on certain people's computers. So, for example, if I'm testing out an ability or a new mechanic, and it seems to be working out great on my computer, on my Unity editor, I've done the thorough testing, and then I'm like, okay, Chris, why don't you take a look at this? And then he just messages me back like, dude, what's supposed to happen? Nothing's happening. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? And then we get on a call, and I'm like, dude,
yeah, I think that would. We've recently discovered that issue is more due to the repo that we're using, but we've gotten a lot better with that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there's a million things that could go wrong. It's a challenge. Okay. But the fact that it works at all is amazing. It's a miracle.
All right, so this next question comes from Dice. Will Bo have friends? Chris, will Bo have friends?
Yeah, everyone in the game is a friend, with the exception of maybe a few nasty characters. Even those nasty characters will have some little bit of charm to them. Maybe in another life you would have been friends with them. But everyone has the potential to be friends. Yeah, this game is very character driven. You will make friends along the way.
Right, and there's plenty of characters sprinkled throughout the game. All right, let's see if I can find another good one here. Okay, so this comes from Kenny Ryan. Will there be a new game plus? I hope the game will be challenging, especially the bosses.
I believe in our Kickstarter we did have a new game plus stretch goal. It's been so long. The initial idea was to do something like you die for real. No, you die in the game, you die in real life. No, just kidding.
Whoa,
That's not, no, you die in the game, you have to start over from the beginning. That's a very
we need some serious hardware support for that feature to actually happen.
Yeah, you would need some very unique hardware for that initial idea.
I got an idea for that kind of game though. We could name it like Sword. It could be like Sword Art, and you can play it online. And if you die in the game, you die for real. I think we could even make an anime out of that.
Oh yeah, Bo anime.
That could only work if it was in the metaverse.
If we have a new Kickstarter, it'll be for a Bo anime metaverse situation. Yeah, I think that covers that. Again, that's something that is fairly easy to implement, and we just haven't like sat down and decided exactly how it's going to work.
Now, I do want to highlight Trevor real quick. Trevor, you're the programmer. How do you make the game, and in particular, how do you make bosses difficult? From a programming perspective, what is it that you're doing?
To make bosses difficult.
Is this a new question, or is this a random Robert question?
This is a follow-up because I think I'm the curiosity from what makes it challenging from a programming perspective of when you're making an enemy or a boss. What is there anything in particular from a programming perspective?
So you're asking like the difficulty of the boss fight, or difficulty of programming the boss fight?
The difficulty of the boss fight itself. Like, how do you balance that and not make it unfair?
Okay. Well, there's really two things that come to this, that go into this. First off, like, just an easy way to explain how to make a boss more difficult programming-wise is like, so a boss has certain attacks. Let's say that each boss has 3 different phases, right? Like a typical 3-phase, like a 3-act structure, basically, to the boss. So you introduce, maybe not all the attacks, but the gist of the attacks in Act 1 or in Phase 1. And each of these attacks have certain values. So like the amount of damage that it does to Bo, or how much space they cover, the wind-up, like how long the wind-up lasts. And then basically, as the fight goes on my end, I just increase those numbers. I bump them up. That's like a very oversimplification of it. But that's generally on my end how you would make a boss fight more difficult. And then when it comes to balancing, it just comes through hours and hours and hours of testing.
Yeah.
Basically, just testing the crap out of it.
Well, design is also
days.
testing too, right? You play it and you see like, oh, it'd be nice if this projectile didn't move in this path, so I could do this cool move, or like things emerge naturally while you're testing, where you feel like I kind of want to be able to do this. How do we enable the player to have that same feeling? What feels natural as far as movement or an attack vector for this boss, and how do we enable the player to do it? But yeah, there's an infinite number of ways to tune things.
Okay.
Thank you for the subscriptions and all that. I'm talking to chat. Thank you for subscriptions and follows, and if you're not following, follow us, because we will be doing streams more often, hopefully. Yeah.
And actually, it's a sub from Voice of Nature, which is again the questionnaire of this next question. And we've got in Elden Ring, I really enjoyed a moment with a transportation trap to Salid, and I might be mispronouncing that. And in Hollow Knight, the Deep Nest, and some Metroid games, there are such moments where you can fall into a really bizarre and difficult place with no ways of returning back other than just survive, and by struggling to get back to safety. Will there be at least one such moment in your game?
Well, that situation is incredibly specific, and we have situations in the game that might have elements of each of those little points that you laid out. I have not played Caelid, but I played Hollow Knight, so I'm familiar with Deep Nest in that situation. We have an area that might be reminiscent of Deep Nest. However, it's not like it's not like you can't. There's 0 ways of returning back. I mean, that's not even true in Deep Nest. So, it would be. I think the pathways are always kind of like clear how you would retraverse back. Although oh no, that's not true. I don't know. I would say revealing the answer to this question any further would be kind of spoiler territory. But yes, there would be like scary, like unfamiliar, bizarre, difficult places. I think that answers that.
All right. Okay, and then this one is from Danny B. what are the unique ways video games share stories and character development compared to other media, such as film, comics, prose, etc.? Chris?
Does anyone else want to take this since I've been talking a little bit?
Yeah, we can go with Alex first.
I don't know.
Okay, thanks, Alex.
Fantastic. All right.
No worries.
Visual storyteller. All right. All right.
I mean,
How
I
about
can't
Moy?
answer. Or, I don't know, Moy.
Well, I think it's much more immersive, in that you are able to control the character. So I think that's makes it unique compared to film, for example.
Yeah.
I think that will be one of the things that I think. I'm not sure if anyone shares this opinion.
For sure, Moy hit on like what I think is the biggest difference is the player interaction. You're actually controlling essentially a puppet, or that's a stupid way to describe it. But you're actually making things happen and directly engaging with things in the game, whereas a movie or show is you're passively consuming. So you're affecting change in this world, and that's actually something we really wanted to do in Bows, where like you actually have a hand in different storylines in the game. You're building things, you're talking to people that you create a relationship with and help them on their own journeys and help them like accomplish the goals they want to accomplish in their lives.
All right. Milton, what do you think?
Well, since pretty much it's in the hand of the player how they actually, consume the amount of contents that we lovingly crafted, every single player is going to be experiencing things differently. And this could come from the choices they make when they're actually exploring, the things that they equip to enhance their gameplay. They're going to be, changing their style on how they actually approach combat and performing. And also, some people are going to be more inclined to actually learn about the story and the lore of the world. They're going to be trying to connect the dots on why and when things happened. Other people are focusing more on combat and those kind of challenges. And there's going to be optional contents that people are not going to be choosing to engage, others will do. Everyone's going to be having a little bit of a different experience, and that's awesome because the sum of all of those experiences is what Bo actually is. Everyone's going to be having their stories and sharing on Discord. Oh, I found this awesome thing. Oh, I was able to finish this quest. This is awesome. Maybe you should go try and explore this location. And that thing is priceless. That doesn't seem to happen with movies that much. There's a difference of opinion how you can actually interpret fixed media, but experiences and your being able to actually do different things with the same piece of media, that's something that only happens here. But yeah, whatever we're going to be doing with this, it's going to be memorable for people, and it's going to be slightly different. But the cool thing is that, yeah, hopefully you're going to be enjoying it.
Now, I am curious, Trevor. You're not again, we've said this several times. Just to highlight everybody to know, Trevor does not play video games. But Trevor, as somebody who has only recently, been introduced to more video games, what is your perspective on this?
I think, honestly, yeah, Chris, Moy, and Milton, they nailed it. Like what makes video games very unique in storytelling is the fact that you are in the story, you are the character. Like you're actually playing around and controlling what goes on in this story. And whereas with movies, anime, everything else, you're just an observer. But with gaming, you're not an observer, you're an actual participant in the story.
Right.
And yeah, so that's my opinion on it.
I think everybody's answered the question enough, so I'm not really going to have anything new to add to that. So let's move on to a question from Carlos, which is, will you guys include a boss rush?
So that's another thing that was in the Kickstarter stretch goals. So that is something we will eventually deliver.
Yeah. All right. right. Okay, let's see if we have any other big questions here. We are kind of coming to the end of this list, so to speak. So let us move on to let's see which one. This would be a good one then. This one comes from Lantern Bro. I think is more of a question for Chris and Trevor, perhaps. But did you guys participate in the Global Game Jam, or have any of you participated in them before?
The Global Game Jam in particular, no. But we had one game jam near the beginning of the development of Bo, where it was the Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam, where the theme was... What was the theme?
It was like join together.
Join together.
Hey! I competed in that one. I got high presentation.
Are you kidding me? Which game were you?
Yeah. Helm's Oddity. It's Milton and I actually worked on a sort of a follow-up to this as well until, well, anyway, point is...
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a game, it's a Zelda-like, where you take over the bodies of the enemies in order to solve puzzles. So it's like Mario Odyssey, but in a Zelda style for the Game Boy.
Oh, cool. Yeah, the game we designed was also dealt with possession, where actually we used the sprite for Bo. So Bo was able to like jump into the bodies of like 2 different types of enemies and use an ability. It was a disaster. We didn't really...
so buggy.
Yeah, it was
Very difficult.
It was buggy as all hell. I think like it never ran once free of bugs. But it was a great experience. That was the first game we shipped. Well, second game if you include our mobile apps. But like that game was awful, but we learned a lot. It was called Foxbat. I think you can't play it anymore. I think we removed it because of deep shame. But
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, yeah, I think I learned a lot, and I know Milton, you participate in game jams frequently as well. We always see new Game Boy games from you.
They are Game Boy styled games because I enjoy the nostalgia of those limitations. And every year there's a Game Boy themed jam. It's called GB Jam on itch.io, and I usually participate with varying degrees of success. I usually learn a lot, and I never end up fully realizing the scope of what I want to do. But it's fun, and it's very educational.
yeah.
How about Alex and Moy? Alex, have you participated in any game jams before?
No, but I have enjoyed seeing some of them. I always like to...
You check them out. You're involved
See
in the community, right? A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have participated in a few, and I actually met Chris in that game jam.
Right.
That was the first time I did something.
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, like Moy said, that's how I found Moy, is when we were doing that game. That's the first time I ever talked to him, asking me if he wanted to join our team for the game jam. And my beautiful direction for him was do a cross between the Lavender Town theme song from Pokemon Red and Blue and the Indiana Jones theme song. So I wasn't like amazing in my direction skills back then, but he was able to pull it off. I don't know if we still have that track somewhere, but it was a
The
sight to
music was
behold.
the best part of this game jam, I take it.
It was very
All right. Again, I've participated in game jams before, frequently. There's a time where I was thinking, I'd like to be a designer. And I do think when I have very small, narrow projects with a pretty diverse team, like Helm's Oddity was created by a team of 10 really talented developers. And, but 10 people on a single game jam in 48 hours is a lot of people to have on a game jam. And I think that's, even though I did decent design for that game and we did do pretty well, it ultimately comes down to production is where I excel at. And unfortunately, you're very limited as to, you don't really need a producer on a game jam. You really don't. I mean, it's 48 hours. You guys should be able to, take care of everything yourself. Although my philosophy is for a 48-hour game jam, your game has to be done within that first 24 hours. Like, your main game has to be done, and then the next 24 hours is just polish and
testing.
Yeah, and that's how it should be. Otherwise, you're not going to get your game uploaded, period. But again, that's just advice you can share. You don't need a producer for that. All right, this one comes from Juanma, I believe, and it is, I follow Thomas Brush, and I recently learned through him that his teachings were key to make both successful Kickstarter and in turn a reality. Could you share some key takeaways of what you guys learned from his material, and which material? What were eye-opening game changers in how you tackled the process of making a game come to life? And we are coming on 2 hours here again as well, so if anybody does need to scamper off, we're also almost done with the questions that we have compiled as well. So I think we only have 2 or 3 more of those.
Yeah. This question is directed to me. Thomas Brush, for those of you who don't know, is a game developer, and he's also like a YouTuber. He created the game Pinstripe and Neversong, Once Upon a Coma, things like that. He created this course, and there's this whole, I know courses kind of have a bad rap sometimes because some courses are poor quality and some might not like be what you expected. This is not an advertisement or whatever. I'm just telling you my experience. His course was amazing for me. I think that's just because Thomas Brush and I are kind of like alike in our personality types, so he was able to like explain things in a very clear way, like step by step of like from 0 to shipping a game, or not shipping a game, but 0 to like launching a Kickstarter project and beyond, right? Programming, art, all these things. And the game would, I can say with 100% certainty that Bo would never have began unless I took that course and really just funneled into his pipeline that he had and learned all the basics. In the beginning, I was a solo developer, so I was even doing the coding back then. He taught me C# basics and the pipeline for getting assets into Unity and what would you need to do for a 2D game, and it was just incredibly invaluable. So I'm super grateful to him. I was even able to do like a few interviews with, or just one interview with him, and he helped elevate the game. I'm sure some of you know about our game because of Thomas, so like that course was pretty amazing. He's a really good guy, and his course worked for me. Like, that's all I can say about that.
All right. We have a few more questions here, and then I think, rather than going through the form, we can just have sort of a free form, rapid fire from the chat. So this next one is just, and I'll go ahead and answer this. This is from Bleg.
Yeah, and you can start dropping questions in the chat, so we just ready.
And that's just, is the release of Silk Song going to affect development? And short answer of that is, there's always a lot of great games that are being made and released at pretty much all times of the year. And what I think we've highlighted already is that we're focused on making Bo the best game that it can be, irrespective of what's going on in the the industry around us, what kind of cool games are being released. Naturally, we've already said that Hollow Knight is very inspirational for us, but when we decide to release the game, that will be on our terms. When we are finished with the game and when we're confident and we know it's going, we're at the highest quality that we can get it. That's going to be when we determine those release dates. But that being said, again, we're just focused on making Bo the best game we can right now. Okay, and then this next question is also from nobody in particular, or it's an anonymous question, which is for Chris. When can Tentai Hana backers and above expect to be able to play a demo of some sort?
I need to look at the tiers exactly, but if Tentai Hana includes a beta, then that will be when the beta comes out. And I need to stay away from giving exact dates. I really apologize. It will be sometime this year.
I guess.
And if not the full beta, we would have a playable demo for you by the end of this year for sure.
Yeah.
But the beta is only for the beta tester backers. Okay, yeah, Tentai Hana is beta tier, so I'm not gonna promise a date for that. But you'll be able to play something before the year is over.
I will say, although we don't want to say a date right now, we internally do have timelines already visualized. We've had these timelines visualized out for quite a time. we want to refrain from making any early promises because we have internal milestones that we're still working on as well. Right, and then the last question from the initial batch that we're going to address here is, what has been, and again, this is an anonymous question, and I think this is a good one for everyone to answer, what has been your favorite parts of the development of Bo?
Anyone but me want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go. I think by far, on my end, the most satisfying part of development of making Bo is like at first stressing out about something very difficult. Like, let's say if there's a new mechanic that's particularly difficult to do for me, and I start stressing out about it, and maybe I spent a lot of time just planning, beating my head against the wall sometimes, and then maybe possibly going a few days of like, oh man, like stuff doesn't seem to feel quite right, like I don't know what I'm doing wrong, and then all of a sudden it always happens randomly after I try some variation of it. I hit play mode and then it works exactly how it's supposed to. And when that happens, that I can't describe like how that feels. It's so satisfying. It's like a combination of hard work, stress being relieved, like opening up a new chapter of testing for whatever the mechanic is. Because like now it's confirmed to work and it works well. Now we go to the next step. Like that's personally my favorite part of making Bo.
All right.
If that makes sense.
Alex, what's your favorite part?
Well, I have a lot of favorites. Basically doing the art is like the most enjoyable part of game dev because you don't really have to struggle with the bugs and stuff. But yeah, I think when I look at the progress being, all my art assets being in the context, you
Right.
can see like a landscape and stuff. I say, well, I have done a lot of these things and they look really cool here.
Yeah,
So,
like when
yeah,
you
it's always great to see your art and don't cringe. So
yeah,
it's amazing.
when you like I said, Alex might do some of the like a piece of art and he has no idea of the context, and then when he sees it in engine, he's like, oh, that's why you told me to do it like that, or like, yeah. So I have that same feeling when I see it in context. You're like, oh, it comes together like this, and it's a lot of tweaking and stuff, but that's always a good feeling, and I think every member on the team shares that also when they see new art come in, and like it gives context to everything they've been working on, visual context at least. I mean, it could take something that looked really, or like, art is such an important part of games. That's all I'm gonna say. It could take something that felt dumb or unnecessary and make it like totally awesome. Yeah.
Moy, what about you?
Well, for me, I think, well, I remember from my experience is that for the first compositions I did for Bo, I remember I used some short clips that Chris sent me on YouTube, and I remember when I was composing, I was playing on loop that video on the screen, just imagining how it will look, and it was like very inspiring. But I remember after that when Chris delivered the first demo, and I tried on a computer, the feeling about pressing start and listening to my music while actually playing, that was the most satisfying moment, because I thought, well, it's really good, it's working, this music. So yeah, I think that's me.
Yeah, and music, and there's been times where Moy's music has influenced the game too. It's not just a one-way relationship where we tell him to make music for this thing. Sometimes it's like he delivers a track and it's like, oh, we can do this because the music is wanting this. The music is suggesting at this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And Milton, what have you enjoyed about this journey so far?
I guess the best part is zooming out. When I am in Unity working on some pieces of levels, it's all divided into chunks of contents, things that are pretty much pieces of moments that are going to be strung together. And if you end up loading all of the scenes that we worked on to actually create the whole area that is supposed to be flowing together, you can actually zoom out in the Unity view and see the whole thing being a huge shape. And that's quite satisfying. You get to see the vision that I had in paper to be actual physical space that you can actually play through. And playing it for the first time in that location and going through all of the moments, it's awesome. Also a bit terrifying. I'm also taking notes on all the things that are not working to actually continue iterating. But yeah, that first playthrough is always magical.
Yeah, I agree.
What about you, Chris?
The best part about working on Bo is, seeing an idea that I had that I woke up from a dream like 3 months ago be materialized in front of me, like in the Unity editor, operating exactly as how I envisioned it. Maybe not exactly, but like sometimes it's even better than I originally envisioned it. And all these, there's so many elements, I can't stress this enough, there's so many elements that need to come together to realize a vision that I have. And my team is able to come together to like help me achieve that vision. It feels so good because it's never something that I could have done on my own by myself. Everyone was involved in creating that. And just working as a team is just really fun, and just creating something cool as a team. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna open it up to rapid fire questions, but I do want to ask Chris, do we have a specific time that you think you're gonna stop, or?
I mean, I honestly probably could go on for another 40 minutes. I realize not everyone can, so again, anytime you guys want to leave, I don't. I'll be here as long as people still ask questions, but I do probably want to hard out in like 40.
Okay. I will need to out probably relatively soon myself. Have a personal appointment that I need to attend to, I'm afraid. So at this point, I wanted to ask maybe Trevor, if you want to go ahead and paste the questions into the doc. Chris, just for a handover, how would we want to do that real quick?
I'm gonna just read off chat, no problem.
Okay, so I'm gonna instead, for the Q&A question box, feel free to ask questions in the chat. Live rapid fire. There we go.
There already been some questions that I saw were good. So does Tentai Hana have a gender pronoun? In the game, okay, so Tentai Hana just in general are genderless beings, so whatever, but in the game, some Tentai Hana will be referred to with her, he, depending on like that character's relationship with the character they're referring to. But it doesn't really mean anything definitive. So Bo can be a her or a he, or a Bo, or Lotus. Oftentimes, more often than not, we'll come up with some nickname to use as a placeholder, depending on who's speaking to them. So the name that they call Bo will be indicative of like what that NPC thinks of Bo. You know, like Beautiful Blossom or Little Lotus or things like that, as for example. But yeah, no gender pronoun.
Okay. All right, I'm afraid I'm going to have to run now, guys, to meet my appointment. But thank you, Chris, and thank you, everybody, for joining. I do appreciate it. And thank you, chat, for these amazing questions. And I hope we have the opportunity to do this again. But Chris is take me leaving. Chris just
Yep.
Chris is like, if Robert's not here, we're done.
We're back. We're back. We're back.
Dude, that cut out at the perfect time. Like it was. Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what Discord is doing.
Right. But I'm gonna run now. Chris, is there anything else I can do for you?
No, that's great. You did a great job, and thanks for joining.
All right. I'll see you guys later then. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.
All right, so we have some rapid fire questions here. If you guys see any interesting ones, feel free to let us know.
Here's one from Treble Micah. Micah, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Will there be graphic, sound, etc. settings for accessibility? Yeah, sure. Yeah, we're gonna have different options of accessibility. Chris could expand on that a bit more, so it's kind of unfortunate that he decided to go to the bathroom right now. But it's kind of, yeah, that's the way it goes. Let's do some other questions. Spirit Buddy, will there be a cross collaboration with other indie game characters in your game as cameos?
The cameo thing, I think I saw that question. So no, that would be kind of difficult to orchestrate. However, there will be Easter eggs if you have a sharp enough eye, and little subtle nods to other games that we've enjoyed. So like, and not just like similarities, but like straight up, like you'll be like, oh that must be a reference to this game. Like maybe you'll see some sort of item in the background that may or may not be from another game. I love that kind of stuff in games, man. So that was always important for me to weave that in where I thought appropriate. Here's a really good question from Trojan Dragon 13. Game devs often find inspiration from accidents such as bugs in the new mechanics or animation errors, inspiring new level character designs. What happy accidents, if any, had Squid Shock had that changed the game in any significant way?
Oh, that's a good one.
God.
I'm going to have to think about that.
I know I have an answer for this.
Oh, I think I have an answer, but it might be spoiler.
Can you hint to me in a way that is...
It has to do with another direction with dashing. I believe.
I don't even know what you're referring to.
You're touching something, and it initiates a dash. You hit a button.
That's not spoiler, right?
You don't think so?
Well, actually, I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, I don't know for sure.
Here, I'll message you privately about it.
Maybe we should start debating some sort of code, as in, you know what happens with the soup when you do the doorknob move? Wink, wink.
We need our own language. We kind of do have a little of our own lingo, but God, level and character designs. I think, oh man, I know I have good answers for this, but nothing is immediately jumping out to me. I think the bat is kind of interesting. The bat ability, which kind of is like one of Bo's first core abilities, literally was I thought about it because I was drawing a sprite for the weapon itself, the bow staff itself, and I somehow like messed up the scale of one of the blue end of the bat, the blue end of the bamboo, because Bo's staff has two ends that have two circles on them, essentially two orbs, and I messed up the scale, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. What if that element, that teal element, was able to shapeshift into different shapes? And then initially it kind of looked like a baseball bat, and I was like, oh, okay, this is an interesting direction. And actually, now that I think about it, that mistake informed a lot about how the weapon works, because now it transforms into has the ability to transform into different things, whether it be the bat or the grappling gun, etc. So that was like a very happy accident that created a lot of interesting design ideas. Also the idea that it was Bo's earring that was the actual weapon. If you notice Bo, if you can see in the bottom right, Bo has an earring, and that earring is actually what transforms into Bo's weapon. And the reason behind that, in all honesty, was because it was easier to animate for if Bo's weapon was very compact, and we didn't have to animate it at any other point besides when it was being used. But that also lended to the transformation abilities of the bow staff. So yeah. Man, do you guys see any other questions here that you guys might be able to answer?
Let's see here. I know there was a bunch of questions that were asked like near
Before,
the beginning,
yeah.
Or like near the middle of this whole stream.
Yeah, if you guys asked another question earlier, you can ask it again.
Yeah.
We know inspirations for Bo as fathers of other games. What are your favorite indie games you've played in general? What about Alex or Moy? You want to answer that? What's your favorite indie game and why?
Maybe Undertale for me, because the story is so beautiful and the characters are memorable. The music is one of the best I've ever heard. It's amazing that it was all accomplished by one person, and I think that it has different paths. That's what really attracted me. Like you can take one path or another, and the first experience is gonna be different for everyone. Just like Elton said, it's one of the strengths of video games.
That game is very special, Undertale. Alex?
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to say Hollow Knight because I played it like 7 times, like in like 3 different devices.
Sure, Hollow Knight's the default, yeah.
Yeah, but one that I really like massively is Rain World.
Oh.
That was an experience, and I keep playing until today because I suck, so I haven't finished it at all.
That game is amazing. If you guys don't know Rain World, look up video. If you guys are interested in programming games or whatever, look up videos about Rain World and how they do the UI and the procedural animation in that. It is so interesting. Milton, do you want to talk about your favorite indie game?
So far, right now, a couple of friends recommended me Deep Rock Galactic. Have you heard about it?
No.
So it's basically space dwarves mining.
Yes.
That's kind of Minecraft and also first person, and it's co-op, and it's amazing. It's so good.
Man.
Anyone in the chat have played Deep Rock Galactic?
I have heard that now that you mention it. That seems like a really addictive game. Am I right?
It's so good.
Oh.
It's so good, and the way that multiplayer is implemented, it's very, very convenient. It's so easy to jump into a game and also coordinate with friends. It's really, really fun.
Yeah, some people have played in chat. Dang, maybe that's the game we should get into. We should get into that too. I don't know. We don't have too much time, but for me, obviously Hollow Knight was very breakthrough game for me. When I first got into indie games, Braid was like a thing. Braid is considered one of the first like good critically acclaimed indie games of all time. And then I moved like into a game called Limbo by Playdead, and Limbo was the game that set me on fire. That game really showed me what an indie game could be, as far as like the storytelling it does and the aesthetics and the art direction. I didn't really understand what indie games were doing until I played Limbo, and then I saw the potential. So Limbo always has a special place in my heart. as far as other indie games, we play a lot. Trevor and I play a lot of Hades. Hades recently.
Yeah,
Hades
that's
is
probably
actually,
my favorite.
Hades has been informing some of the design of Bo, even like as far as visual stuff, or I don't know. We get a lot of ideas from games, obviously, but Hades is really fun. Trevor, do you want to?
Yeah. Hey, obviously Hades. Yeah, that we just talked about that. I think I was also very quickly hooked into Celeste when I played it.
Oh yeah.
It was like the gameplay was just so smooth. It was so well done. I love Celeste so much, and I look forward to their next game. What is it called? Earthblade?
Yeah.
Yeah, which from what I gathered of the trailer, this is probably a subjective thing. It just seemed like Celeste but with combat, which I mean that seems awesome.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where they go with it. Yeah. Have you found any cool movement options that open up shortcuts? Speedrunner might find helpful. We're pretty careful about like that kind of thing. But there are situations in which, like, if you know about certain interactions, you can reach secrets that other people might less skilled or less curious people might miss. And we hope to incorporate that a lot more as we polish.
I got an interesting one. Bo may be the main character, but which character in the game is your favorite?
I kind of can't really spoil that. I kind of really like Hashihime. Hashihime is not really a spoiler. She's in the trailer and stuff. Hashihime is the guardian of the bridge that you pass early on in the game. And she's just one of like the earliest characters of design. She's this she has like a bad attitude, and like just kind of was fun to think about her dialogue and how she looks on screen and stuff. She's also one of the few human. She's not really a human. She's humanoid. She's one of the few humanoid characters in Bo. Anyone want to say their favorite character without spoiling anything?
Mine contains spoilers. My apologies.
Don't you like Tori?
I think you know my answer. No. You know my answer. It's the one that goes like.
Oh, okay. Wait, like this?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly that one.
Sure, yeah. I remember when we watched you play that live, and you were just like laughing when you saw that, or like laughing out of joy, not because it was funny. That really made me feel good. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Because there's sometimes we make things and I'm like, is this good? And then we finally show it to someone and they're like, this is awesome. And making a Milton giggle like that was the best. Let's see.
My favorite is I think if you played the original Kickstarter demo, it's not spoiler, but it's the Gashadokuro.
Right.
That's by far my favorite character.
Yeah, that's like
and like every time Gashadokuro appears in the game, it's like an epic.
It's always
deal.
memorable.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to answer that or go to the next question? If okay, next question. Oh, Moy?
I was gonna say that I agree with you. I also like Hashihime.
Yeah.
But I also like another one, but I won't say it because it's spoiler maybe.
Okay. Yeah, and the track you wrote for Hashihime is a banger too. Like, that's one of my favorites.
That's the one that I enjoy the most making.
Yeah. Oh, really? I didn't know that. Came naturally, kind of.
Yeah, it was like I was very inspired of her character. Like I imagine how she will behave and things like that. So
Cool.
She's waifu material, so
Yeah. She's if there is a waifu in Bow, it is Hashihime. Right, Alex? I think Alex has like a body pillow situation.
And no waifu for everyone. She's my wife.
Yeah, okay, so no one else can, Alex has set up camp there.
And then you Google the actual Hashihime legend. That magic is,
Yeah. You don't really want her as a waifu, but, if Alex wants to go there, so let's just let him. Okay. So if given the chance, would Bo or another Tentai Hana make a guest appearance in an indie fighting game, Rivals of Aether? I would love that. That'd be so cool. Of course, they'd have to approach us. I think Bo would be really interesting in a fighting game. It might give the programmers, depending on how far they want to go with it, it might be very problematic. Because some of Bo's signature abilities involve like stun locking in interesting ways, so it might be difficult, but it'd be so awesome. Super Smash.
That'd be
even.
interesting.
If you guys support enough, we got Bo in a Smash.
I have a game development question here from Eon Genesis. Any advice on making a Metroidvania game feel special and designed well in terms of game design and level design?
I think special.
That's a lovely question. Want me to take this one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so design is pretty much, whether you like it or not, a form of art. You're defining what content is going to be where, and that, like every piece of art, is going to be having pieces of yourself as you plaster it in your canvas. And the thing is, the more you try to be unique and yourself about your work, the better. And this is something that, whether you realize it or not, is going to be perceived by the player eventually. I had the pleasure of playing Axiom Verge 2, and the story and how it unfolds, besides the awesome exploration and the awesome gameplay, has some really interesting undertones, and that also becomes a lot stronger if you know about Thomas Habb's personal story and what he has to go through this last couple of years. And that also makes that kind of contents and those correlations that you make on the themes he's going to be touching a lot more personal. And that kind of thing matters. If you're sincere about the contents that you're actually creating and plastering in your Beyond Metroidvania, that's going to be special for someone else.
Yeah, authenticity is very. That's like a revelation I had, like a few months back. Is like, you have to be authentic to your vision. Don't think, to an extent, you have to think about like what is like marketable or what is cool or like what players expect. But you also have, in order to set yourself apart and be special, is like tread new ground in a way that feels authentic to you and unique to you as a person. So whether that be like creating a storyline about something that you really resonate with and try to like weave that into the game, or something very wacky visually that maybe other games have never did something like this and you're like scared to put it in because it hasn't been done before. But that is what makes games special, is like showing something that someone hasn't seen before. And I'm very concerned with like visuals and things like that. There's so many design decisions that I made. I'm like, man, I could draw this tree like this and people would be like, yeah, that's a tree. Or I can have a spin on it where I'm doing the lead, I'm adding like these weird patterns and paper textures and making this leaf bushel look super abstract but still recognizable as a leaf bushel, and like taking these creative risks. And I was always rewarded when I took like a creative risk and like did something in a weird way, unestablished way. And part of the reason we're able to do that is because we we're kind of fresh in the game design industry. At least Milton's not. He's plenty of experience, but we're also able to make these weird choices that maybe someone who has been indoctrinated in a certain way would never do, because it's a stupid idea, really. Like, we would do something stupid, but it would turn into something beautiful with other people's input. There's a lot of stuff we could talk about. How you guys doing? Any advice on... Okay, that was the same question we just answered. If there's a sequel to Bo, I hope it goes the Metroid Fusion route, where there's an evil version of Bo. There's plenty of weird...
What would you call it? Ob?
Ob, yeah. Ob. Oob.
I got one. How are Tensai Hana perceived or viewed by other yokai in the game?
In the game, yokai are pretty much... Well, all the enemies are like variations on a yokai or just straight up yokai. So they're kind of see Bo as like an easy target, I would think. Like, Bo is very unintimidating in stature. Bo is... a lot of times you'll be playing and be like, yo, Bo is small compared to some of these NPCs or enemies. And part of that is like, essentially some of these things need to be used as platforms or whatever, but like also giving you that feeling that you are small, and these NPCs and enemies see you as a non-threat, and you are using the abilities that you gained in order to overcome these bigger challenges, bigger enemies. So they kind of see you as like, they always underestimate you when they first see you, with the exception of some characters, but most of them will underestimate you, and then it's your job by playing the game to change their mind in a way. Will Bo be appearing in more future in-person events? The game? That's a good question. We can't say anything for sure, but yes, we would love to be. Our only in-person event was TGS so far, but there's potential for more. But we never like to announce anything until it's absolutely inked in stone. Cemented in stone.
I have an anime question. With our collective love for anime, will there be any JoJo references in the game?
Have you watched JoJo? I haven't watched JoJo yet. Milton is...
What?
Oh, no.
My God, you're missing out. You're missing out.
I watched a few episodes. Right now. I kind of feel like I needed more context. I felt like I didn't really understand what was going on. It's not like I didn't like it.
Did you start with Stardust Crusaders or something?
Well, I started when he, his brother, they're like rich, and he has like a brother.
Oh, okay. You're pretty much at the very
at the very beginning. Yeah, if that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm open to it.
The first season is good. The second one really picks up into something that's more unique, and from the third one and onward, it becomes really awesome.
Okay, it's one of those where you have to invest.
It's one of those. Yes, but it pays off. It really pays off.
Okay.
And you're going to be getting all of the references that are pretty much everywhere. You're going to be like, oh, that was actually a JoJo reference.
Awesome. It is pretty iconic in its stylization. I know that for a fact.
Pretty much everything's a JoJo reference. So
Whoa,
you're going to be opening up your eyes to the world.
So it's like a cultural requirement to watch JoJo.
I would say so.
Cool, because I just finished Chainsaw Man and I need my new anime fix. Yeah. Chainsaw Man was another good one that recently came about, like right up my alley, that show. But yeah, no JoJo references because I haven't seen JoJo. Maybe if I watch JoJo in the time before the game is finished, I will add one just for you. JoJo's overrated. That's what this person said. Okay. Meet Milton in the back. He'll take care of you. I run main events.
It has its moments.
I I got a question here. Can you unscrew the balls on the end to use as ranged attacks? So I'm guessing the balls at the end of the staff.
Yeah. So both staff has two ends, vermilion and teal. The teal is like for attack-based stuff. The vermilion end is the attack-based, and the teal end is magic, shape-shifting based stuff. So they don't screw off. I imagine if you pulled hard enough, they might detach, but instead they're made of this protean goo. Or they can change states of matter. So like it's like a protean goo that can like shape shift into another shape at will. So that might mean that they can detach, but they don't unscrew. That wouldn't be cool enough. All right, I think we're approaching the end of this. It seems like not too many questions. If there's any outstanding questions that we did not answer, just feel free in the next minute or so to post those. What's Bo's favorite tea? Teal tea. It's a special brew in Strange Garden.
I
Are
have
we going to be able to someday sell TLT for reals as merchandise?
That would
Is
involve
it going to be legal?
that would probably involve
Are
like
there going to be side effects to consuming that tea?
Oh yeah, you grow ears but yeah, you would need some like special bioluminescent addition that would be non-toxic. I don't know. It'd be very difficult to make in real life. If there was another Bo game, will you change the graphics going from 2D to 3D? I'd have no interest in working in 3D. I always like 2D stuff, but who knows?
I got one. Will side quests have memorable story or an interesting gameplay? Did they improve since the first demo? I don't remember if we already answered this question.
The answer to that question is yes.
Yeah, an all-around yes. Like they're going to be improved.
Yeah, and they already have been.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there ever a scenario where Bo be muscular? Maybe if
like taking steroids or something.
Maybe if you gave him some like miracle grow, and he got old enough. But Tentahana don't live long. They live about as long as a flower would. Okay. All right, if you guys don't have any other questions, I think this is probably a good place to wrap up. We've been going for 2 hours 45 minutes. Again, the reason we did this is to celebrate our 1-year Kickstarter anniversary, and I know a lot of you in the chat have been involved in our community, and also donated to our Kickstarter campaign when we launched it. So we are super grateful. This doesn't happen without you. I can't stress that enough. If we went back in time, you did not donate, the stream would not be happening. The game would not be being made, or maybe it would, but who knows? You motivate our entire team to continue with this project with passion. Okay. Anyone else want to say anything from the team?
Nope.
Okay.
Other than, I share Chris's sentiment that, we're all just incredibly grateful for your support, and yeah, we couldn't do this without you guys.
Yeah, I know that's cliche, but it's true sometimes, and in this case, it's absolutely true. Yeah, thank you everyone. Again, I'm Chris, the creative director on this project, and Milton, you want to just introduce or unintroduce yourself? I don't know. Just say who you are.
I used to be Milton. Apparently, I'm not anymore. And thank you so much for your support. Your guys are awesome, and can't wait to see you guys enjoying the game and the fruits of our lovely labor.
Thank you, Milton. Moy?
Yeah, thank you so much for the support so far, and it was very nice to be this anniversary. I hope this is gonna be the birthday of Bo, maybe Bo Day or something like that. We can make it like something that happens. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Moy, and thanks for the sub, Voice of Nature. Alex, want to just a quick sign off?
Yeah, I have to thank everyone because you literally are making my dreams come true. Like
Yeah.
I always want to work in art and stuff, so I'm very grateful. And I hope you guys get to see all the art I'm doing because I'm gonna go so hard on it.
Yeah, Alex is going hard. Alex is carrying me hard. Yeah, you really changed Alex's whole life by donating to that Kickstarter, by the way. Like, he's finally, like, working on a game. That's been his dream, so... Thank you guys for that. And Trevor signed off already, yeah. Okay, yeah. Great, thank you so much. We won't drag this out any longer. Thank you for your questions. I'm very sorry if we couldn't get to any, but that's just the nature of time, guys. So, we will see you at the next stream. There's no schedule for that, but we will let you guys know. Please join our Discord, follow us on Twitch, follow us on Twitter, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I have to find the correct scene to switch to. Okay, here it is. Bye.